What if I told you that rejection is not your enemy, but your most powerful ally? Think back to the last time you were rejected. Maybe it was a job you didn't get, a person who didn't choose you, an opportunity that slipped away just as you were about to grasp it. That feeling, sharp, humiliating, sometimes even paralyzing, is universal. And yet, Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor who ruled one of the greatest empires in history, faced rejection on a scale few of us could comprehend. Not the polite kind, the brutal, soul-testing kind. Betrayals in his own court, uprisings among his soldiers, disapproval from philosophers. The gods remained silent. Still he endured, not by resisting rejection, but by using it. The first thing Marcus understood was this: rejection reveals attachment. When someone tells you no, they're not just denying you an outcome. They're exposing your expectation. That is the first lesson. To the Stoic mind, expectation is the first crack in the armor. The more you expect, the more power you hand to others. So Marcus began training himself to desire only what he could control: his thoughts, his actions, his virtue. Rejection, then, became not a defeat, but a spotlight. It showed him where he had grown too soft, too needy, too attached. Second, he saw rejection as redirection. In his Meditations, he writes, "What stands in the way becomes the way." That wasn't just philosophy. It was strategy. When the Roman Senate resisted his reforms, he turned to the legions. When the plague ravaged Rome, he didn't curse the gods. He organized relief and rebuilt the army. Every door that closed forced him to examine doors he had ignored. Doors that led not to comfort, but to character. The third insight is perhaps the most subtle. Marcus used rejection to humble the ego. Power invites pride. Pride blinds judgment. Rejection, however, cuts through illusion. When the people murmured against his decrees, when friends turned cold, when his own son disappointed him, Marcus didn't retaliate. He wrote, "You are but a soul carrying a corpse." To the modern ear, that may sound bleak, but it's liberation. He was reminding himself, you are not owed anything. Not love. Not approval. Not success. You are a servant of reason, not applause. Lesson 4. Rejection breeds endurance. We do not grow by being accepted. We grow by standing back up. Marcus was tested in the fires of political chaos, military disaster, and personal grief. His writings, composed in the silence of a tent during wartime, are soaked in sorrow, but sharpened by resilience. Every letter is a reminder. The man who keeps walking, despite being turned away, becomes immovable. Fifth, rejection trains discernment. Marcus learned to separate false opportunities from worthy ones. When flattery tried to lure him, he rejected it. When wealth was offered, he saw its weight. When fame chased him, he walked faster. Why? Because he knew that not every yes is a blessing, and not every no is a curse. Often, rejection is the invisible hand that pulls you away from disaster. Sixth, he recognized that rejection purifies ambition. Most people want to succeed for the wrong reasons. To be admired. To be envied. To prove something. But Stoicism teaches, the only valid ambition is to become excellent, for its own sake. When Marcus was denied pleasure or praise, he saw it as a test. Was he doing this for applause? Or because it was right? Rejection peeled away the ego's motives, until all that remained was purpose. Seventh, rejection amplifies silence. When you are turned away, criticized, ignored, do you lash out? Or do you listen? Marcus chose silence, not out of weakness, but discipline. He once wrote, "Be indifferent to what makes no difference." The silence after rejection becomes fertile ground. It breeds reflection, and reflection breeds mastery. Eighth, rejection strengthens detachment. The Stoic mind must be like a fortress. Nothing enters without inspection. Rejection, Marcus believed, trains you to need less. Less validation. Less comfort. Less from others. He practiced voluntary discomfort, sleeping on hard floors, eating plain food, so that when the world withheld its pleasures, he wouldn't flinch. To him, rejection was a drill, a rehearsal for adversity. Ninth, he knew rejection sharpens gratitude. It is easy to be grateful when you are accepted, when doors open, when the world smiles. But Stoicism demands deeper roots. Marcus trained himself to be grateful for the storm, for the insult, for the loss, because it forced his soul to awaken. It pulled his attention to what truly mattered, his integrity, his reason, his inner peace. 10th, rejection fuels humility. A man surrounded by power needs constant reminders of his smallness. Every time Marcus was overlooked, doubted, or resisted, he used it as a mirror. He reminded himself, "You too will die. You too are flawed. You too are replaceable." This humility didn't weaken him. It made him just. It made him merciful. It made him wise. 11th, he saw rejection as a shared human experience. He wrote, "Nothing happens to any man that he is not formed by nature to bear." When you are rejected, remember, you are not alone. Marcus knew that even emperors, generals, and sages were subject to the same brutal rhythms of fortune. Rejection connects us. It humbles the arrogant and ennobles the humble. 12th, rejection becomes the forge of creativity. When the expected path is blocked, the Stoic finds another. Marcus adapted constantly, reshaping policies, rethinking strategy, rewriting the story of his reign. Creativity, he understood, is not born from comfort, but constraint. Rejection imposes limits, and limits invite innovation. And finally, the 13th lesson, rejection is not personal. It feels personal. It stings. But Stoicism trains the mind to separate feeling from fact. When someone says, "No," they're not saying you are unworthy. They're saying this door, at this moment, isn't yours to walk through. Maybe it never was. Maybe it's saving you. Or maybe, just maybe, it's daring you to build your own. And Marcus Aurelius did. In silence. In solitude. In the shadow of war and loss, he built something greater than legacy. He built a mind that could not be broken. A will that did not depend on others. A life guided by principle, not popularity. So the next time rejection greets you like a slap to the face, remember Marcus. Don't run. Don't beg. Don't shrink. Thank it. Learn from it. And walk forward. You are not what they said no to. You are what you choose to become next. You are what you choose to become next. That's the essence of Stoic power, your ability to respond, not react. You may not control the hand you're dealt, but you can control how you play it. Marcus Aurelius didn't just survive rejection. He used it as a mirror, a weapon, and a compass. And so must you. There will come a moment, perhaps soon, when you are rejected in a way that feels final. A door will close, not gently, but with a thud. People you trusted will fall silent. The message will be clear. You're not wanted here. That is when the ordinary person crumbles. But you, if you carry Stoic steel in your spine, will remember. This is the test. Not the obstacle. The gateway. Marcus never asked for an easy life. He only asked for the strength to endure the one he was given. His journals are not filled with praise, but with reminders. That death is near. That pain is part of the process. That virtue is enough. And that nothing external, no insult, no denial, no loss, can touch a man who rules his own mind. So when you are turned away, remember this. The world may not see your value yet. But you must. You must become the kind of person who thrives without validation. who builds in silence, who sharpens his soul on the blade of adversity. Because rejection is only powerful if you fear it. Once you embrace it, it becomes your ally. It makes you sharper, quieter, stronger. It makes you dangerous, not to others, but to every excuse you've ever believed. And the moment will come when the same people who once dismissed you will turn and ask how you did it, how you survived, how you thrived, and you'll smile. Not out of spite, but understanding. Because you'll know something they don't, that rejection wasn't the end. It was the beginning. But the story doesn't pause here either. Because there's another layer Marcus discovered, a darker and more powerful one. A darker and more powerful one that most never reach because it requires walking through fire without flinching. Marcus Aurelius knew that rejection, when fully embraced, does something peculiar to a man. It strips away not just desire, not just ego, but identity itself. It forces you to ask, who am I without their acceptance? Without their titles? Without the version of myself they once applauded? And if you dare to sit in that silence long enough, if you dare to answer honestly, something extraordinary begins to happen. You become untouchable. Not because you no longer care, but because you no longer need. And that's a terrifying thing to the world. Because a man who no longer needs approval cannot be controlled. This is the secret Marcus understood beneath the polished words of Meditations. He wasn't just writing to reflect. He was rewiring himself, training his mind to stay steady as the world trembled around him. Imagine it. Emperors before him were consumed by their appetites, undone by rumors, shattered by betrayal. But Marcus? He stood in the eye of the storm, writing quietly, as if every rejection, every loss, every scar was simply another layer of armor. You must begin to do the same. Not just philosophize about pain, but metabolize it. Rejection is not to be avoided, it's to be used. To test your reason. To cleanse your motivations, to awaken your discipline. When someone dismisses you, don't argue, don't prove. Just smile inwardly. They are teaching you something your friends never could. They are gifting you the absence that invites presence, the void that demands self-reliance. And here lies a paradox. The more comfortable you become with being unwanted, the more powerful you become in every room you enter. Because you are no longer there to be chosen. You are there because you chose to be. You bring weight, stillness, certainty. You no longer audition. You command. This is what Marcus Aurelius forged, not a throne of gold, but a throne of discipline. The kind no army can topple. The kind no insult can reach. The kind of inner empire that is invisible to most, but unmistakable to those who've been broken enough to see it. And there's still more. There comes a moment, if you walk this path long enough, when rejection becomes indistinguishable from redirection. You stop labeling moments as good or bad. You stop resisting. Instead, like water, you move through openings others overlook. You build a quiet confidence not from applause, but from alignment. You start choosing the harder path, not because it's noble, but because it's yours. You begin to see rejection not as a wall, but as a compass. And if you truly master this, something else begins to dissolve. Fear. Not just fear of failure, but fear of disconnection. Because you realize you were never meant to fit into a world built on shallow expectations. You were meant to rise above it, to think, to endure, to act with virtue when no one is watching. That's what Marcus did. That's what you must do. So the next time they say, "You're not good enough," let it echo. Let it burn. Let it scar. And then smile. Because now you're being sculpted, not into who they wanted you to be, but into who you were always meant to become. Because eventually, rejection stops being something that happens to you. It becomes something you invite. Not for the pain, not for the drama, but for the sharpening. Marcus Aurelius understood this, though he never said it outright. He placed himself in discomfort, surrounded himself with critics instead of flatterers, walked among the sick and the dying, chose the weight of responsibility over the ease of indulgence. Why? Because he knew that every no from the world purified the yes from within. Rejection, at its highest form, becomes initiation, a passage only those with inner fortitude can walk through. And once you've walked through it enough times, you stop flinching. You stop explaining. You stop justifying your path to those who were never meant to understand it. And when you reach that level, where rejection no longer weakens you but sharpens you, you start to see the world differently. You don't chase validation. You radiate conviction. You don't cling to opportunities. You create them. You don't fear doors closing. You walk with the calm knowledge that another will open, or you will build one yourself, brick by quiet brick, without applause. This is where Marcus Aurelius lived, in the cold air above praise, among the peaks of solitude where clarity is loud and the soul speaks plainly. And what he discovered there was this, that the man who no longer fears rejection is no longer owned by the world. He becomes sovereign, untouchable, stoic. But don't confuse that with isolation. Marcus wasn't a hermit. He wasn't withdrawn. He led armies. He sat in council. He governed an empire. But he did it without needing their cheers, without needing their love. He gave his best because it was right, not because it would be rewarded. And this is the final edge most never reach. Because most people let rejection break them or harden them. But Marcus Aurelius? He let it refine him. It didn't make him bitter. It made him better. It didn't close his heart. It clarified it. You see, when you stop needing rejection to end and instead start using it, you become dangerous in the best way. Not angry, not arrogant, but composed, unshakable. Because what can they take from a man who builds his strength from loss? What can they deny to someone who thrives in the absence of permission? That's the Stoic path. The quiet road walked by few, misunderstood by many, but mastered by the few who realize this truth. Rejection is not your enemy. It is the flame that burns away your weakness. It is the gatekeeper to greatness. It is the test life gives to those who say they want to rise. Now you know. Now you choose. Will you resist it? Or will you become something rejection cannot touch? Welcome to Voice of Wisdom, your space for deep inspiration and powerful insights. In this video, through the voice of Sadhguru, we share a life-changing perspective, a talk that holds the key to clarity, peace, and purpose. This isn't just motivation. It's a benefit for your entire life. And still, the path unfolds. It unfolds in moments that seem ordinary, a delayed message, a door left unopened, a conversation that dies mid-sentence. These are not accidents. These are tests. Tests the Stoic welcomes, because the Stoic knows life speaks loudest through denial. When things are withheld from you, don't ask, "Why was I rejected?" Ask instead, "What must I now become to be undeniable?" Marcus Aurelius walked that line daily. He didn't run from rejection. He walked into it, steady as a soldier, quiet as a monk. And what he learned there wasn't how to avoid pain. It was how to transmute it into strength, into wisdom, into the unshakable calm of a man who has seen behind the curtain of the world and found nothing there worth fearing. Because here's the deeper truth: rejection does not define you. Your response to it does. And if you respond with clarity, with integrity, with forward motion, you become rare. Not loud, not famous, rare. And in a world addicted to validation, rarity is power. But beware, the more you grow, the more you will be tested. The world will try to pull you back into its games. into the hunger for recognition, into the noise of opinions, into the trap of comparison. And if you fall for it, even once, rejection will sting again. But if you remember the path you're on, the path of the inner citadel, of self-rule, of quiet mastery, then you will smile even when they misunderstand you, even when they walk away, even when they say nothing at all. Because you'll know, rejection doesn't close doors. It opens you. It burns away the parts of you that were still bargaining for comfort. It silences the noise of the crowd long enough for you to hear your own soul speak. It brings you back to the only truth that matters, the one Marcus wrote not for the world, but for himself. If it is endurable, then endure it. Stop complaining. He wasn't just talking about hardship. He was talking about life itself, about all the little ways the world resists you, tests you, denies you, and how each of those moments is a whisper from fate saying, "Come further, come deeper, come truer." So come, step into the silence that follows rejection and build. Build a character so solid it cannot be denied. Build a will so refined it cannot be broken. Build a purpose so clear that even if the entire world turns away, your path remains lit from within. Because that's where Stoicism leads, not to applause, but to peace. Not to dominance, but to discipline. Not to being accepted by others, but to finally accepting the role life is calling you to play. A role not given by man, but earned in the fire.